Well, here it is. As you can see, a little bit different setting today. We're not out on the water. We're not sitting in the boat. Today is more just talking to the fans. And this is something Bobbi and I are going to try to do more of. With social media comes a whole lot of comments and questions and, people wanting answers. And so we're going to start doing more of that. You're going to get mine and Bobbi's opinions. That's all they are. They're just opinions. And that's what we have to remember is everybody has an opinion, and I don't know if there's necessarily a wrong or right one. This is something Bobbi and I decided we wanted to do, is start talking a little bit about the questions that you all have out there. There's a lot of comments and questions on social media, and obviously that's where a lot of this world revolves around anymore. The big one right now is the crazy question about forward facing sonar, kind of the rules that have been implemented for 2025 and beyond. So today we're going to talk about the new rules for 2025. The best I understand. I'm not going to get in depth to them, but the ones that have kind of been implemented. And I want to say first and foremost, I love my forward facing sonar. If you haven't used it, it's an amazing tool. I mean, it's going to make you a better fisherman. All the arguments out there, if you use it, it's going to make you a better angler. You're going to learn from it. So there's 3 different circuits out there essentially that people follow in the world of fishing, and that being Major League Fishing, the Bass Pro Tour, and all their other circuits that they have. You got Bass with the Elites and Opens, and then you've got the NPFL, and all 3 circuits have went a different direction. Me personally, I think the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour is the best of both worlds, and I think it's going to showcase the best. What I understand with Bass basically, they didn't do a lot with theirs other than you get to use 1 transducer. So it keeps the guys from having, 4 or 5 transducers on their boat, or having, 2 or 3 on their trolling motor and 2 at the back. I don't know all the details of that rule, and I'm not going to get into details. I'm sure some of you will correct me on that. The NPFL world has went completely no forward facing sonar. To me, that's definitely old school, but it's not changing with the times or technology. So it'll be interesting to see how that one is going to play out. But what I love about the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour is it's kind of the best of both worlds. And what it says here, I'm going to read this rule. The angler obligation: each angler must declare their use of forward facing sonar and or 360-degree sonar for the period to their official and receive verbal confirmation during the preceding break. So once a period begins, use of forward-facing and or 360 sonar cannot be added until the start of the next period. So what that means is I can't start the first period, be 10 or 15 minutes in, and have fish schooling out in the middle of the cove, and then say, hey, I'm going to use my forward-facing sonar. No, you have to declare it before that period starts. So my guess is if you don't use it, period 1 or 2, ultimately you're going to that your third period will count with it. So it'll be interesting to see, because you're going to have to strategize. One, you're going to have to practice. You're going to have to practice for forward-facing sonar, but you're going to also have to practice for not using it. A lot of my competition the last couple of years, some of these guys have literally went in and committed a whole practice to nothing but forward-facing sonar, and they fished the entire way that way. I haven't been wired that way. I still use it tremendously. I've had a lot of success with it. So it's going to be interesting to see how those anglers, how they approach it. And then, somebody like myself that I'm going to have to, fish the way I've grown up fishing without forward-facing sonar, but I'm also going to have to spend some time and focus on, I'm potentially need to use this as a tool for a particular period to catch some scoreable fish that way. So it's really going to be interesting. I'm anxious to see how it plays out. Obviously, we are a long ways from the start of the season, but I know even as we are a long ways, I'm still trying to understand the rule fully, but also start to think and strategize of how I'm going to approach practice and ultimately the tournament, and what way will work best. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Back to, like I said, some of the other circuits of, only allowing 1 transducer. That's probably not going to change the catches much at all. Maybe, there's the way guys are using it. It's going to hinder a little bit, but you're not going to see probably their production or the way you see it on TV any differently. The circuit that's going no forward facing sonar, I mean, at least you know the rules up front that you're not allowed to use it. I don't know if they can use it in practice or how that works, but if you're not using it all, you're definitely handicapping yourself, like I said, even in practice, because it's such a good tool to find fish, to see where they're located, see how they're positioned, and how to then approach it as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And, we're really curious to see what you as the viewers and fans think as well. So here's something that I just read as I'm deciphering these rules. This is kind of interesting, and I know where this came about. So all boats are limited to 2 forward-facing or 360-degree sonar transducers in any combination. What that means is a lot of guys have the 360 technology that's been around, probably about the same time that forward-facing sonar came out, but it's different. It's more of a scan that's not in real time. However, Garmin's live scope is basically a 360, but in real time or wherever you scan it. So what that means is, me being a Garmin guy, I can run my traditional forward-facing sonar, in the forward motion, but I can also have a secondary one that's in perspective mode, which perspective mode and the 360 technology are not the same, but they're viewed as the same type of technology. So that's why, you can have one forward-facing transducer and then maybe like a 360, or like when I was up in New York last year, I had one transducer that was facing forward, but I also had one that was facing backwards, because if you remember when we were in New York, there's a lot of drifting backwards, and I had one facing behind the boat, so I knew it was coming up behind us, even with the trolling motor facing forward. So that's what that is. I thought that was pretty interesting. So that'll be good to know there, that basically on our trolling motors, we can still run things the way we have over the past several years, whether it's the 360 technology or perspective and your forward-facing sonar as well. So kind of 2 thoughts on this is, the new MLF BPT rule is going to showcase the most well-rounded angler. And what I mean by that is you're still going to have to be a forward-facing sonar angler, because you're going to have a period where guys are probably going to dominate with that technique. And then also, and what's going to be cool is that's going to show, whether you're a fan of forward-facing sonar or not, it's really going to show you're going to have a guy that goes out and really smashes them potentially one period using forward-facing sonar, and then they may struggle the next 2. That's going to be kind of one of those things that shows how good the technology is. So it's going to show, the other side is it's going to show the guys that fish intuitively when they can't use their forward-facing sonar. So guys are going to have to go back and fish old school and show that they can still catch fish not staring at their screens. I fished with a gentleman earlier this year, and it was really an eye-opener to me, a younger angler, and it was interesting to see that when he couldn't stare at his screen, he was kind of lost. And he even admitted to me, he's like, I grew up just fishing, but ever since I got dialed into this forward-facing sonar, I just can't fish without it. So it's going to be interesting to see how the standings turn out after this 2025 season with the BPT Tour. So it'll be really interesting when the fans are watching this. You're going to be able to tell when the guys are using the technology versus when they're not using the technology. I predict the catches are going to be way higher during those periods, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. So I don't know what circuit has the rules figured out the best, or ultimately how to play out. I guess only time will tell. It'll be interesting to see when we circle back this time next year of how the season plays out. But I truly believe that the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour has the best setup to kind of showcase both ways of fishing, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, because I think you're going to be able to tell when guys are using it and when guys aren't. I don't know how it'll actually show up for the fans on Score Tracker, how it's going to look. I'm sure it will tell them they can use forward-facing sonar. They've picked that as their period, so it'll be interesting to tell. I think they got a couple little things to iron out there, but I'm really excited to see how it plays out. I know I'm going to be working on both techniques in the off season. So when I'm using my live scope, I'm not just out there hunting individual fish. I'm using it as a tool to find the cover. It's amazing when you're fishing a lake with grass. You always hear us talk about fishing the grass edges. It's great for finding grass edges, for finding that not visible structure, stumps under the water, trees. A lot of times you'll see a tree sticking out of the water, but it may be angled over here and you're casting over here. So it just makes you more efficient out there on the water of your presentations. It amazes me when you're fishing intuitively how much time you waste just not throwing around fish. So there's going to be periods where I know I'm throwing a jerkbait, and when I throw that jerkbait, I know I'm throwing it around fish. But then there's going to be 2 periods where I'm just going to have to be randomly casting and hoping that I luckily put it in the strike zone of the fish. So it's going to be interesting to see how the 2 come together and how it ultimately plays out. I know there's a lot of opinions on this rule, on the forward facing sonar. Love it or hate it, it's here to stay. And I'm just curious what your thoughts are. Please send them in, and we'll try to do the best. But just remember, they're all opinions. We all have opinions. There's not one that's wrong or right. And that's one thing about fishing too, is you can be the guy who has every piece of technology under the sun, and you can use those as your advantage. Or you can be the guy that's simply out there fishing off the bank with a cane pole. It's how we prefer to do it. So tell me your thoughts. Let's hear what you have to say.